Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. I truly believe that sometimes a single insight can completely change your business direction and allow you to achieve your business goals. In this episode, I interview Annie Koshy. She is an author of How to Be Your Badass Self. She's a brand strategist. She's a lead role in two short films. She's a public speaker, event host, and she's also host of Saga 960 AM radio show. During our discussion, we talk about her book, her consulting practice, her personal, her journey, and also what it takes to build a marketing strategy for business. When it comes to marketing, like my fellow business owners, I'm not expert in this area, and I struggle when I have to make a lot of decisions around the marketing department, especially what to do next. What should I do now, and what's my plan for next 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. So it's difficult for me because I'm not expert on subject matter expert, and if you like me. You will enjoy my discussion with Annie when she talks about how to build your personal stories and what process it requires to build a marketing plan for a business to make sure that your business growth also complements a marketing strategy as well. So if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Annie Koshy. Annie's, she's been helping business leaders building brand and marketing set of businesses in many different areas. And she's recently, published a book. Her book name is How to Be a Badass Herself. Actually, I love the title of this book. Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time and welcome to podcast today.
Thank you so much, Gurmeet. It's a pleasure to be here. And the book title was quite interesting, right? Because you think of the term badass as being perhaps a swear word or a rude word, but I don't actually think of it like that. I think being your badass self is being your true, authentic self. And that we have this desire deep within us to express that, and often in my own case I had suppressed that. And so how to be your badass self is how to be your true authentic self, using that inner energy that you have to create that brand that you want to be.
Yeah, I know I can, relate to that quite a bit. There's so much information out there. As a business leaders, we have to pick and choose where you want to spend your energy, where you want to spend your time. And it's almost like you have, in order for you to get somewhere, you have to be badass to something. And you have to protect yourself as well, because so much information coming your way, right? So unless you take care of yourself, your values, your energy, you're not gonna get somewhere. So I thought it was very interesting, the title of the book that at least let you navigate your path where you want to get to and let you focus on what the path you've taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And I often use this analogy when I'm teaching or coaching, and that is that we're going to a new area and we immediately reach for a guide, the GPS, and we reach for someone to tell us where to go. And coming from a background in which everyone had told me, do this, do that, and I had just followed along right into my, mid 40s, there came a point in my life where I decided to take back that control and navigate my own life. And I speak about being your own GPS, being your own navigation system. You know where you want to head. You have an idea in mind. You have a route in mind. And then it's just a matter of following through with those steps and going through on that route. Regardless of whatever roadblocks you come through, you have a destination in mind, and keeping that focus is going to really help you. But first and foremost, you need to know where your destination is.
Very interesting. And that reflects in your book, you walk through that. So before we get to the book, if you could give our audience a little bit of your background or your journey, how you got to, be, guru in marketing and brand building, side of things. So if you walk us a little bit of your journey, how you got to this point?
Gosh, I don't really know how I got to this point except to take one step at a time. And I think that each of the hats that I wore, in terms of the roles that I did, in terms of the careers that I had touched upon, they've all contributed to this person that you sit in front. I believe that whatever it is that you are doing, you should do it with full passion. And anything short of that is short-sighting yourself, or short-changing yourself rather. And I started my career as a teacher, and I remember even as a young person always being passionate about teaching. But I realized today that it wasn't about the teaching so much as about the learning. And I truly am a lifelong learner. It was about being able to understand something, and my way of being able to solidify that knowledge was to teach it. And so the teaching was not because I was enjoying standing in front of people and teaching it. Teaching was to actually learn it better. And it's funny because I actually started to really understand Shakespeare when I started teaching Shakespeare. And that didn't happen until I was in my mid-30s, when I had to teach 5 different Shakespeare plays to 5 different age groups or grades simultaneously. That's when you really start to love what it is that you're doing, and you better be passionate about it, right? But having said that, we all are in a different era. We're not in the same era as our parents, where they went to school for something, graduated in something, got a job, and stayed with that job for decades and decades. I think in most of our lifespans, we're going to have either 2, 3, or more different careers, and they're all going to be either similar in, say, you have transferable skills that you're going to be able to use, or you're going to completely scrap what you have learned and learn something completely new. It all depends on what your focus is, where you want to head with that. Having said that, I moved from teaching into database management, and it just happened that that role came into my world, and I was very good with organizing and understanding certain trends. I was able to pull that, and I was asked to train in a particular program called Razor's Edge, which is a product by Blackbaud, and it's used by a lot of not-for-profits. It's very complicated. It can be garbage in, garbage out if you're not careful. I was very particular. I became very good at that to the point where I was training other individuals. That, however, was not my passion. My passion has always been in the creative side. But coming from a very academic and a South Asian family in which arts and creative things are not the breadwinners, they're not the things that are going to be encouraged as your actual career. They're almost things that are done as a hobby or something in your spare time. And maybe, oh, great, you've got a talent in it. Great, you'll sing on stage here, or you'll perform here, or you'll do that there, and it's a side thing. But for any of us to show up at home and say, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be doing this as my full-time career, they would probably think that we had sprouted horns at that point. So me moving into media was something that I did when I finally realized that what I was working at was not my passion. And because it was not my passion, it was getting harder and harder to motivate myself to actually put out the type of quality work that I wanted to do. I was having the same thing that many people have. It's a Saturday night blues. It's not even the Sunday night. It's a Saturday night blues, because on Saturday night you go, oh my goodness, I got to get up tomorrow. Oh my goodness, I got to do this tomorrow. Oh my goodness, it's almost the end of the weekend. You're already anticipating the end of the weekend before even the day has even begun of half your weekend. And that is because there's this reluctance that you have of that Monday morning dread of getting up and facing your Monday morning. Mondays are usually my craziest day, but I absolutely love it. And the reason I love it is because now what I'm doing is not just what I'm good at. What I'm doing is what I'm passionate about. And the combination of the two of them is me being able to really plork through my day, play and work. It's an urban term that's been coined to really talk about this new sort of trend that's happening of individuals doing their work, but also following their passion. And that's what I do today.
Well, interesting. And what inspires you to write this book? How does that transition to writing a book? And
oh, wow. That's a super cool question, because my hero in my life was my grandfather. He was a journalist. He was an author. We had a printing press in India. And I remember as a small kid on vacations going to the printing press and listening to it being, processed. And it was with the blocks and stuff. And so He wrote one of the first books, a travel guide, and presented it to Indira Gandhi. He was always a hero in our family, and I didn't realize at the time how much of of him, I take after.
Mm-hmm.
To write a book was a dream that I thought that I would never be able to do. I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. I didn't know what to do, how to go about it. But I always had this dream of doing it. And then it was, what do I write? Because we have so much knowledge, we have so much experience, but when you get to a certain point, I had a lot of life experience behind me, and I didn't know what it was that I wanted to write on. And then I sat down and realized, what is it that people approach me for? What is it that people always ask me to do? What is it that people see me and see as strength? And when I started to look at that, I was particular about how things looked. I was particular about how things were presented. If I was on stage, I was particular about how the run sheet was, or how I presented it as information. If I was asked to put an event together, I was particular about how we approached the guests. And all of a sudden, I started to realize that the little components that I was picky about were all branding components. They had to do with
Sure.
how things looked, how things were
Mm-hmm.
communicated, how things were
Yeah.
laid out, what was the messaging that was being done. Is it consistent with what the person is about, which is my brand, basically? I
Mm-hmm.
had over time realized that I had become a brand. My name,
Yeah.
my reputation, the work that I did had become a brand. And
Mm-hmm.
as such, I realized that I had then wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience that I was able to share with others, the steps that it involves to really, really develop and hone in on what a personal brand is all about.
Very interesting. And in that shows in your book as well is your journey and a lot of thought process. I really enjoy in a book the way go through step by step. Say, listen, this is how you got to discover yourself. I enjoy the thought process. I think a lot of details you put into from personal journey into the book as well. So
I think that that's very important because you can write a book and it can be factual and it can be knowledgeable and great, but there's no connection to the audience because the audience can't resonate with some of the journey that you've gone through, and they just say, well, that's her journey again. I wanted to write it in such a way that people can see themselves in there and they
mhm,
can say, oh, this isn't that hard to do, because I start off by saying nothing of what I've written is rocket science. Nothing of what I've said is something that's going to be insurmountable. But what it is if you look at each individual chapter, it looks easy. The complication arises when you have to apply all of those skills simultaneously and combine them all and then create an image or a brand or a reputation or a branding, a personal brand story. And
mhm.
that's where the complication is. It's the consistency of doing that time in and time out over multiple, platforms across whatever it is that you do. I
No,
also, yeah,
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I also speak about the fact that there used to be a time where you can differentiate between your personal brand, your personal sort of social media, and what you do as a company. And
Hmm.
we've realized that over time, you can't separate the two. You really have to be very cognizant of what is it that you're saying and doing in your personal life, because it is going to reflect on you if you have a digital footprint for your work as well. It's going to come back. It's going to be reflective. And we've seen it happen many, many times where someone has done something in their personal and it has come back in a very negative way for their business and reputation, really. So.
Hmm. So talk about, you use the example for Steve Jobs, for Apple, you use Microsoft as another example, and Amazon, Bezos another example. So how does that personal brand connected, and does it help to build a corporate brand as well? Do you want to keep two different brands separate, or is one of another? It's almost the same thing.
It's a interesting question that you've asked. Entrepreneurs actually have one step over large corporations. And this is because entrepreneurs are usually a single person or a small group of individuals, and they have a reason for having started that journey.
Hmm.
That reason becomes their story, and they share their story. And when they share their story, they're sharing it to a niche market in which that market really resonates or can affiliate themselves with, can relate to that story. Large corporations now are going back and really, really focusing in on what's their brand story, what's their story. And you'll see large corporations making commercials, perhaps a vignette commercial, something that the audience will be able to look at it and say, oh, I relate to that. I can see myself or my family in that situation. And therefore, when they do that, you can actually, that's where you're going to get your customer base buying into that story, buying into that brand, buying into the vision of that or what that brand makes you feel. And so corporates, brand builders, marketers within large corporations are looking at what is their corporation's brand story, so that that brand story is something that can be used in various scenarios, but to really share the same thing. Basically, you're looking at what are the what's a mission? What's a goal? What's a passion behind what it is that you're doing? Why? What is the why?
It's probably easy to find out for small companies to, that the reason and the story than big corporations, because now you have a lot of people involved. Would you say it's much easier for entrepreneurs, small companies like a 5, 10, 20 employees to discover that story than compared to large corporations?
It is. It all has to do with leadership, and it all has to do with how that leadership is able to get the others in the team to believe into that passion, right? So I think there are two sides to it. It's not easy either way. For an entrepreneur, yes, the brand story is easier to share that because it's one person's vision, passion. Now, if they bring someone else onto the team, it's a matter of sharing that passion, and then that person has to contribute to that so that it now becomes a shared passion. And then as the team builds out, the team's vision shared. But then you have the concept of having to adjust perhaps the mission or the goals to make sure that it covers or captures everyone's vision, and that's the growth process. Now, when you have a larger corporation, you have someone who's come in and taken on a role of leadership. Now, that person who's come in and taken on that role of leadership may not always buy into what the original person who launched the company's vision was for that company. That's where you come in and you have someone come in and they rebrand the entire company, or they change a lot of the fundamentals of that company. Now, there are a number of ways that you can actually look to make sure that that doesn't happen, is to ensure that the branding, the company story, the passion behind what it is that's being done, it permeates through all levels. So starting from grassroots, from the people who are front facing, customer facing, right up to anyone who is on your housekeeping staff, anyone who's in clerical positions, anyone who's in the, maybe in the garage or administrative role, not just your first and second rung administrative roles, because it should start really from the bottom up, listening to what's there, and then make sure that the management at the top are reflecting it. So it's a two-way reflection. It's not a funnel or a mountain. You're looking at making sure that it is an even playing field, so that everyone is feeling vested into what that company's brand is about, what that company's mission is about, and that they're all being heard. It may mean that you're taking small groups of people and having focus group discussions on what are some of the challenges, what are some of the things that need to be heard by management, and having those conversations with mid-management or with floor managers, so that they can take it up to mid-managers and then vice presidents, and then the movers and the shakers of each company. That's a lot more difficult to do, because change is always difficult, and it's a slower process when you have a larger corporation to have that change evolve. So it's a lot easier in a small scale business to be able to listen to a smaller group of people, have a breakout session, have that discussion, and then if it's reasonable, if it's something that's doable, if it's something that is at the end of the day furthering the cause of the organization, putting those things into practice.
When you, as you mentioned, on a corporate level, but you're trying to bring everybody into the team to come up with a story, doesn't that story get more generic as you expand that boundaries of the stories because you want to be inclusive of everybody? Doesn't the story get a little bit more generic and generic, and it's just so generic where it's sounds similar to somebody else's story because it's very generic. Where if you have a one business owner you're trying to focus, it's going to be a very specific story because it's only one person. It's probably have a, don't you think that resonate much better with the business, with the brands than compared to the very generic and the story who's a very inclusive of everybody in a company?
Yeah, so having the story doesn't mean changing the story.
I
Having a
see.
story means to make sure that everyone is buying into that story or understanding the reasons of that story, right? It forms the core values. You need to understand what the core values are for the start, the onset, whether it is that you have an environmental company.
Gotcha.
And the reason
Mhm.
was because of the impact that this is making on the globe, around the world for certain things. And so you look at the stats, you say, this is what it is. This is what we are doing. This is the change we are bringing about. So we are bringing about change by looking at sustainable, housing in this sector, or we're looking at ensuring that there is clean water available for all children within a certain age. Whatever the story is, the passion behind it, the reason, the core values of why that's being done, whichever passion it is that you have, that needs to be consistent.
Mhm.
Not the Each person's part in that story could be unique. When they're
Exactly.
sharing it with a customer, they may have their own story to share about why they're so passionate about the bigger picture, which is the bigger
Gotcha.
company story,
I see.
right?
So smart stories gonna all add up to the same message that you're trying to.
Absolutely. So it's
Gotcha.
talking about having that alignment with the main focus of what it is. If you don't believe in, so say for example, you've joined whichever company it is, ABC
Yeah.
company.
Hmm.
When you join ABC company, if you join it just because ABC company is giving you a salary and you're getting this big fat paycheck every month, you're not going to be with that company very long. And the
Hmm.
reason why is that if you don't believe in the management, you don't believe in what they're standing for, you don't believe in the mission of what they're doing, and the impact of the work that you're doing, you don't find value in your contribution to that company, then you're not going to find value in actually putting your passion into it. And because you're not putting your passion into it, your days are numbered in that.
Yeah. Especially the younger kids. I manage a lot of young workforce as well, right? They're coming from university colleges and they can almost demand that they want to know what company stands for, what the vision is. Compared to previous generation, I think the new workforce can, they look for more of that. They want to work for the brand that really care about, social causes. They want to work for brand. They're really trying to make a difference in societies. So I think it's the newer generation, the younger workforce is for them is a lot more important than previous generations.
Yeah, it's very important. I think it's a question that everyone needs to ask. And one of the things that our current 2 years almost of being in a lockdown situation and having a lot of restrictions is we fast forwarded almost 10 to 15 years in digital life.
Hmm.
And the change that would have taken another 10 to 15 years to happen, and perhaps even longer than that in certain industries, we were catapulted into a digital era. And some companies were ready for it, and some really went through a very, very painful process, and many actually fell away on the wayside. Anyone who was not able to embrace change, anyone who was not able to make those fast decisions without having long-winded 5 to 6 hour board meetings and requiring a whole bunch of red tape to have certain decisions passed through, any company that was not able to just pivot and change how they did that, found their recovery from the initial couple of months or a couple of weeks where everyone was sort of shell shocked by what was
Hmm.
going on, was a lot longer, and in some cases didn't happen at all. The other
Hmm.
thing that we found that really happened was that normally you will see mid management and senior management as being people who are in their later stages of their career, who are older, perhaps in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in this digital world where many of those individuals did not have the digital skills that they needed in order to be able to lead the teams that they were normally able to lead. They were
Mm-hmm.
used to doing presentations in person. They had people who were able to present it for them, to run the slides, to be able to put those presentations together. They had that rapport of having their team around them as they presented it. None of that happened when you moved into a Zoom call. You were left on your own. If you had to present it, you presented it. And if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't know your stuff, it was apparent.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found a bit of a change in relationship where younger generation kids who were perhaps just newly graduated, kids who had been seen as being green around the edges, were all of a sudden being referred to or called upon to help upgrade digital skills in
Uh-huh.
some mid to senior management staff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's been something that's been a really good eye opener, so that we're looking at age not being a determination of whether someone's qualified or skilled in an area, but you're actually looking at the skills able to actually perform a role.
Very interesting. Interesting point. So let's talk about personal journey. The business owners who are building a brand. They look into that. I think that was your journey as well. Personal branding when you're trying to corporate that with the corporate brand. How big is the undertaking, the personal journey of it? Your beliefs. Before you tell a story, you gotta figure out your story. A lot of very often we know that events happen in life, but we haven't built a story around it that we can tell out there, right? So how big is that undertaking that somebody has to go on that journey and figure out their story before they can go tell the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding out who you are, then what makes you tick. That's such an important point. Um, when you change the things, and I say this in my book, when you change the things that are within you, you are able to change the things that surround you. So
Mm-hmm.
when you are looking at yourself and you talk about why personal brand is so important, you're asking yourself the question, who am I? What is it that I have that I can share with you that's going to help you? And that's a very, very important question to ask yourself. Often we look at what we know how to do. That's our qualifications. What is it that we know how to do? What can you do? Those are the positions that you have actually held. But then there's a third category, and that is, what do you like to do? And these are the hobbies. So we often think, can we actually combine those to create the ideal sort of role?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things that hold us back. We think to ourselves, we're not educated enough, we're not good enough in some way, we're not tall enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, we're not this enough, we don't live in this part of the town. The list
Yeah.
goes on and on and on. But how do you break those barriers down so that you're looking at what's holding us back? Are you actually doing the things that drive your own passion? It means that you need to really sit down quietly and look at what makes you happy. And are you doing
Mm-hmm.
the things that make you happy? Not what you have to do, because the have to do's are something that someone's saying you got to do something. You have a certain
Mm-hmm.
deadline to meet, you have certain expectations, you have certain responsibilities, targets that you have to meet. Those are your have to's. But how many of those have to's are I want to do because
Mm-hmm.
I love it? And
Yeah.
if the have to's are not the want to do's, then you need to look at your list.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
that's where the difference happens. Today, for example, if I have to sit and I started my morning at 5:30 this morning, and I won't finish it till very late. And I finished my night last night late. It's not always like that. It just happens that today is a very, very busy day.
Mm-hmm.
But most other times, if I had been asked to go to an office at 5:30 in the morning and sit there and work, I would have been burnt out if I had done
Mm-hmm.
that. But because I'm actually passionate about what it is that I do and I love what it is that I do, I find that that passion fuels the energy that's needed. Having said that, one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is this desire to contribute endless numbers of hours to the building of their dream. And that leads to entrepreneurial burnout. It leads to quickly losing sight of that drive and passion that you wanted and started with.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking that time to connect with family, with friends, taking that time to unplug, to recharge, as you see behind me, in nature,
Yeah.
taking those moments to enjoy some calm and solitude is really going to serve you well. Those are some of the biggest takeaways I would say about understanding the who am I. In order to understand the who am I, you need to fill yourself up before you can fill anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to discover yourself before you start going out and start telling the story that ties with the brand you have. Would you say that's one of the biggest challenges or obstacle, when people are trying to build a personal brand, that or technology is another challenge, or communication or timing is another challenge? What would you say, what do you see people struggle with when they're trying to build personal brands?
So everyone has tons of ideas. We're all
Yeah.
bubbling with ideas.
Yeah.
But having an idea doesn't translate into having a successful business. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are a number of things that actually go into the development of your idea, from idea to mapping it out in a financial sort of overcast or a projection of where it's going, into making sure that you have a idea of where you're actually heading, idea of what your target audience is going to look at. What is a problem that you're actually solving? Not that you need to solve it, but what's a problem that's already out there that you're going to be looking at to solve? And how is it that you're going to be doing it different? How are you going to be standing out from that sea of mediocrity and making sure that you're not creating maybe a new, completely new product or a new idea or anything, but how is it that people are going to see you as different? What is the value for service that you're providing that they're not getting out there, that people are going to sit up and go, wow, that's a little different. I want to see what this is like. And that
Mm-hmm.
wow factor of what you do special as versus what everyone else does is going to really determine how your longevity in this market.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. So let me ask you. This is probably more related to me. The question I was going to ask you. So, business owners who start a business, there's not limited hours in a day. Definitely, you need to discover your story, as you mentioned. That now we have to create a content. We have to run a business. There's not so much time in a day. How do you see business owner approach, and what would you recommend for business leader if they want to tell their story? Hey, listen, now you need to create a content. You still need to run a business. You get a lot of other challenges to deal with, but you still gotta, because creating content is time consuming, right? You gotta create a content, you gotta produce it, you gotta edit it, and then you're gonna publish. It's a time consuming process. Where you see business leaders, what approach they take, and is that something they can partner with you and you help them out as well?
Absolutely. So there are areas that my team actually focuses on. And so one of the things that as you start to grow your business is you realize that you can't do it on your own. And if you start to wear all the hats, very soon you're going to have a business that's not really a business. And it's just,
Yeah.
going to, you can't sustain that. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
sustainable thought. So how is it that you grow your team? I'm a firm believer that when you hire someone onto your team, you hire the best for a job that you want them to do, not for you to micromanage them,
Mm-hmm.
but for you to bring on a team player and for you to have them as a partner in furthering that goal for the team. When you have an entire group of people that you are have got on your team, each person has their own responsibility, and their contribution to that team effort is going to make sure that the team as a whole is working towards that overall goal. And that means mapping out what everyone's responsibilities are. If you are leading that team, then making sure that when you have those weekly meetings, that people are coming there engaged, knowing what they need to contribute to that, knowing what they have to make sure that they complete before that. And if there are issues or problems, being able to manage that with them. To be able to say, okay, let's take a look at that. Is it because of workload? Do we need to slow something down? Do we need to bring or expand our team?
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that are supply chain issues? Are
Mm-hmm.
there other issues that are causing slowdowns? Is it and there's an aspect of understanding that each of the people that you're bringing onto your team is a human that has a family and has other situations. Being empathetic at the same time as being understanding and firm are very important. These are all skills, leadership skills, that it takes time. Not every boss is a good leader. Not
Hmm.
every, and you've seen that happen time in and time again. So how do you manage your time? I utilize my time, personally speaking, as much as I can. When I'm driving, I'm either listening to some sort of podcast. I use that time to speak to my friends and family who may have called and I didn't have time to return those calls.
Hmm.
I will be constantly thinking in my head, uh, what do I want to do with the next sort of level of the branding? Where am I headed with this? Those are some things that are constantly going. But I also make sure that I uh, stop those thoughts so that I'm able to replenish. And I think this is very, very important.
Hmm.
It's not a small thing when I say that entrepreneurial burnout is a big problem. We tend to think that the more we work, the better it is. The harder we work, the more we're going to get. Well, it doesn't work like that. And
Hmm.
so I actually schedule into my schedule my breaks. I
Okay.
schedule time when I know that I need to write a report. My calendar is available to nearly everyone if they've asked for it. And if um, I need to schedule time in which I don't want to speak to anyone, I actually block that time off. And
Hmm.
that's very important. So, blocking times where you are maybe taking that 15 minutes to speak to your spouse or make check in on the kids, um, go for a quick walk.
Hmm.
Whatever it is that you need to do, that's your me time that's going to help you. That's going to actually give you the energy and the focus that's going to help you to utilize your time more effectively when you get back to doing what it is that you have to do.
Yeah, that is very important. I can speak of my experience, right? So, we all have our families, but you need to shut your brain down and gain your focus, right? I have my process of doing it, but my time is early in the morning, 2:30 to 4:30. That's my time. So I just focus on that time. But I understand that's very important. If you don't do that, if I'm not doing that in the days I miss, I'm always going through, it's like I'm going through the whole day, just feeling that I'm missing something out, that I'm not lying, I'm not grounded properly, I'm not, I'm missing something out because I haven't done that, I didn't spend the me time in the morning.
Every successful leader wakes up in the morning with gratitude. And I think this is something that I have just taught myself to do, is to ensure that when I wake up, every single breath, every single step, every single moment that I have, I'm grateful for those moments, the good,
Hmm.
the bad, the sweet, the sour, that all of those have contributed to my day. I tend to be one of those anomalies where I am happy and cheerful at whatever time I wake up in the morning without coffee. And
Yeah.
so I tend to be like this. But I do like my quiet in the morning. I do find that I need to have that moment where I'm getting ready for the day. Once I'm ready to face the day, I've had that hour in the morning where I may be getting dressed, but in my mind, I'm going through things. I'm calming myself. I'm telling myself all the things that I have to say to myself. What you tell yourself, what you talk to yourself
Yeah.
about, is really going to fuel the change within you. And if you start changing those things within you, everything else outside of you starts to change. The people start to gravitate to you differently because the
Hmm.
energy that you're putting out there, that magnetic personality that you have, that you are as an individual, starts to truly, truly shine.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's I think the personal development, I assume that a lot of business leaders go through that. I know I started mine about 4 or 5 years ago. I have to actually write stuff down. So, for me to feel that gratitude, I have to write my gratitude. So that's how I feel it. But I know everybody has different ways of doing it. But as long as I think you coming from this, place that where you are, you just doing, affirmations in the morning, putting some positive energy out. Interesting. So how big is that process for business leaders to go through and knowing your values, what do you hold, all that your belief system, what do you hold? The world's gonna hit you with a lot of negative events all through the day. How important is staying grounded and holding your values and seeing from that compass? Listen, this is the path I'm going to go. Doesn't matter what comes in my way, I'm gonna stay on this path.
Well, it's about having ultimately your goals your focus and remaining focused and remaining goal centric so that you know where it is that you're going. You
Mm-hmm.
are the one that's navigating that path. It's very important. We're all, every single one of us, anyone who is listening right now, we've all faced challenges. We've faced failures. I've made tons of mistakes, more mistakes than I can even begin to count. And I will continue to make those mistakes. But if you don't see them as mistakes, but opportunities to learn, and if you
Mm-hmm.
don't see them as a setback, but a fall forward, and then you are failing forward in life. And so by failing forward, you're really looking at making sure that each time you do have something that could have been done differently, you're taking away a learning from that. You're taking away an experience from that, but you're also taking away something which you're going to say, okay, well, I didn't do it right that time this way. So let's try it like this. And
Right.
perhaps it works, and perhaps you need to tweak it again. But you're constantly learning and adapting and changing. And that truly is that beautiful journey that you're going to be going through. If you look at it with that positive sight and that positive outlook, you don't get bogged down in the negativity as much. And you don't have the headspace any longer to absorb other people's negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, the point that you can say there is that this is your dump truck,
Yeah.
not your yard. Pull along.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I read quote from one of the guy I follow, Grant Cardone. I don't know if you heard
Mm.
of him, but one of his quote I find very interesting that failure is just a feedback. You never fail if you don't give up. Right? If, by definition, you don't fail if you don't give up. It's just a little feedback that you get along your path. But if you don't give up, you never fail. You just pick up yourself and keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is what sets apart successful leaders, successful business owners, is the perseverance, the grit, and the tenacity that they need to get through the downs so that they can actually have those ups.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you are actually down and out for the count, your attitude towards that, your uh, ability to help others even when you are struggling yourself, your ability to put um, yourself first so that you're able to help others also be first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a
Yeah.
selfish tendency. It is about being able to make sure that you're coming from as best a place as possible. You're giving your optimal self so that you can help optimize others.
Yeah. You're coming to place from a service that you want to be service to other human beings, right? Very interesting. So let's talk about brands. We talk about personal journeys, brands. Building brands. After COVID. When the COVID love settling down. Anything change in a market that business leaders who've gone through this personal journey, maybe they have a little bit of time during the COVID, they've gone through it. Do they have to pivot some directions, or do they have to change their approach, how they build the brands again, how to build a corporate brand and get back to the revenue levels they need to get back to? Is there anything changes during this time?
Yeah, actually, a lot has changed. Brands that had not been using social media for their marketing purposes have now really increased their digital presence. And consistency across brands is something that's also very, very important, so that what's being said on one platform is reflected in another platform. And also, my other pet peeve is the photograph, the
Mm-hmm.
importance of the photograph, and the continual education that's needed to understand why your photograph and what you put on your website or what you put on your social media is the new age business card. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have that right business card, you're going to be
Yeah.
overlooked. And so putting your best foot forward, your best face forward
Yeah.
is my message, is that brand yourself consistently across all of your platforms. Make sure that it is the type of image that you want put out there. That image of yours is your calling card.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I like how you mentioned that in a book as well, that you got to pick the colors as well, that align with your energy, and make sure that it's the right colors for a brand as well.
Absolutely. Colors actually reflect a lot. In my own brand colors, I have 4 colors that I use, and they are reflective of me as a person, of what I want to say with that brand. If you look at companies such as Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they have specifically chosen colors that are reflective of the messaging of their brand. And so this is something that's very important, and a lot of thought goes into the building of a branding color palette in reflection of a brand. I just recently worked with a client to brand a new component of their business, and it's very important that the brand reflect the messaging that you're doing with regard to the goals and the mission and the vision of what it is that you're doing. What is it that you're trying to change? What's a problem you're trying to solve? What's your niche market? How will they see that color? Is it actually reflective? So those are some things that are very important. If you look at, for example, environmental companies, any company that's to do with natural products, often their colors are in the browns, the greens, and it's associated with that specifically because it sort of subliminally relates it back to nature. And so there's a lot of brand association that's done with color that's very important. A lot of people don't put a lot of insight into that or thought into that.
Yeah, including me. I didn't think of that, but when I read your book, it got me thinking. My brand colors are red, black, gray, and white, because that makes up Encompass logo. Then I'm thinking I'm always wearing blue. How does that relate to that? So I started analyzing.
Well, what you're wearing is fine. It is not like I specifically, if I'm officially at an event, I will try to be in my brand colors, but not because of that. I just think I just gravitate to these four colors more than often than not. But what does your company stand for? What is the messaging of what it is? Do you have a certain vision that you're putting out there in terms of a certain feel that you want them to have? Then you look at those brand colors and you say, is it reflective of what it is that I want to say? Is that aesthetically what the messaging is that you want to have on across it? And sometimes it takes a couple of tries. You look at a couple of combinations. We had to do that with my last client, and we had to look at a number of combinations to see what was actually going to work. And it may be a particular shade of a color that works better than another shade. Maybe it's cooler than one or warmer than another one. Whatever resonates better. That takes some time to do. So having and hiring a branding strategist like myself or our team, we sit and work with clients. We look at what it is what is their messaging, what is it that they want to say, and how does that map out into a color brand or a color scheme. And you usually can work on that. Between 2, 3 to 4 colors are often a branding palette.
You mentioned about the branding strategy. So let me, that got me thinking. The question: when companies growing, they want to grow their marketing department, right? So you hire 1 or 2 people, but these 2 people, are you hiring for expertise or are you hiring for the labor work? Let me put in context what I mean by that. You work in an industry all the time. That industry exposure is usually you're gonna have the people are hired. They're not gonna have that. The experience you're gonna have that. Somebody from outside the partner, the employees are hired. They're not gonna have that. But I need to train those people. But I don't have my process set up. I haven't got my branding sorted out. I haven't got my story sorted out. The people who are hired, they're not going to be able to get me where I need to get to. So how does companies go about that? They hire people, but they partner with somebody like you outside to get the direction and strategy and all that where you have to think it through a lot of the items. So is that partnership you see very common, and how does the company approach the marketing department development?
So we are brought on as consultants at that point, in which either we take it on ourselves. It doesn't make sense for us to go in and say, do this, do that, and then someone else is doing that. Often they will hire our company to actually come in and do the branding strategy. We will go in and we will manage the social media components. We will work with doing consistent branding across the board for various social media platforms. We'll look at the SEO and tagging, geotagging, all of that sort of stuff, so that that's consistent and in alignment with the building of the brand. As for the colors and the sort of thing, that usually is a conversation that we have with the founders with regard to what it is that they want, what they want to say. Sometimes they go back to the team and say, you know, we're asking all of you to contribute your ideas and we'll choose the one that we all like the best. That also works. But if it's someone who has an idea, has a logo, fair logo idea or what they want, and then they can articulate that, or they say, you know, I really don't know what I want. I like trees, I like birds, and I want to put something like that together. And then a designer will go back from our team and design that, and come back with certain variations of it. And then, yeah, that's it. So there's a point where you decide on what's the font you want to use, you know, to represent your brand. What are the highlight colors that you're going to be using? What type of marketing material needs to be created? What do your PowerPoint presentation slides look like? You know, so that they look at. See, this is where you take a brand such as Nike and you see the swoosh and you know right away it's Nike without, right? So you, as small entrepreneur business owners, that brand association hasn't happened yet, right? Their messaging hasn't gone out. So being consistent along all of these lines over multiple platforms over time is going to build up that brand identity.
Interesting. So let's talk about, I know you know a lot of South Asian business as well. When you talk about community-based or ethnic-based, you know, communities in a country or in a place, especially in a, you know, diverse, you know, community we live in, is it different way of building brand in communities? You know, any specific community, or is it just all the same? You just have to tell the story, and you know, where you see the major differences?
I don't think that people actually budget enough marketing budget. I think that they think it's almost like the forgotten budget. You know, it's not really thought about because they don't see the value in it. And when they do bring someone on board for it, a lot of mistakes have already been made that are difficult to change. And they want the type of presence that they see other people having that have put in that effort for that right from the beginning. They want that after the fact. But as with anything, you're going to get what you really sow. So if you haven't spent the initial sort of formative years into laying some solid foundations and you've built it on shaky ground, when you decide or you have grown to the point where you need to actually have that solid foundation, you're going to really maybe even start from scratch again. Have to build out. So it's always better to build slowly and steadily than to do some sort of fast growth projection in which you haven't really mapped it out over multiple areas. What's your income coming in? What's your market? How are you increasing it to the market? What's your product? What are the various iterations for that product? Have you done market research for it? How has it been received? What are the changes that need to be made? And then let's take a look at how do we expand our team? And then you start that process again and build out slowly like that.
Very interesting. Wow. Yeah, I know it's you know, we always think about that. You know, what's your target audience? If the target audience is certain community, you want to make sure that, you know, you target to their story. But point well taken that, yeah, you need to scale it up as a business scales up. You need to scale your marketing department, right? Just to get to trust it. So how do you know, what would you recommend who business leaders who are looking to build their brands as a, you know, to, you know, generate revenues, you know, 2022 next year, they're planning for, this is the time where everybody plans, say, I'm going to go do this next year. What would you recommend? Where do they start if somebody wants to go on the journey and start building the brands and start building that portfolio?
Well, I think you should, as a business, generally have a long-term and a short-term goal strategy. And so your long-term could be 3 to 5 years. Your shorter or mid-term sort of goals could be your 1-year strategy. And then you look at it over quarters as to what you're expecting to achieve. But even those quarters then get broken down into monthly and then weekly targets. so that you are actually taking that long-term vision and then checking in every so often so that you're looking at, are you on course? Do you need to change your course? And doing that SWOT analysis so that you're looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, what are some of the opportunities for growth, and what are some of the threats that are happening that we need to really mitigate before they become a problem. So periodically doing that once a quarter until you have things in motion and things are moving quite smoothly, then it's easier to do it in the second cycle or the second year of a cycle. But in the first year, when you're establishing things, it'll start off on a daily, weekly, monthly basis until you get through the first quarter. Second quarter becomes easier. By third quarter, you have certain foundation things in place. You're starting to look at whether you're meeting your financial projections and making sure that you have the team around you that's going to really be able to help you grow into that next level.
Very interesting. Well, there's so much to learn, from somebody like you've been doing it for a long time. And where can people find this book, and where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Absolutely. The book is available on Amazon. So all they have to look for is How to Be Your Badass Self Using Your Inner Energy for Brand Success. It's by Annie Koshy. That's myself. As for finding me, the best way that they can do that is to find me on LinkedIn. And Gurmeet, you can share my LinkedIn profile link, or they can find me on Instagram or on social media. It's usually under Annie J. Koshy, or go to my website. So that's www.anniejkoshy.com, and my contact form is there that they can drop me a line on that.
Okay. Definitely. I'm going to include all those links below the video as well, so people can simply click a button. I will definitely recommend, I learned so much from our discussion. There's so many different, you are been doing it for a long time. There's so much, if I'm running a business as an entrepreneur, when you're building a company, there's so many blind spots that we don't see that on a daily basis. But it's, experts like somebody like you know the blind spots are, you can guide us in the right direction, and we can get to those goals much faster than we would do it ourselves. There's so many mistakes you can avoid that way. But I learned so much from our discussion. I want to acknowledge you for, spending time with me. Thank you so much for time. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Absolute pleasure myself too, Gurmeet. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Annie.
Okay.
Hi there. Thank you so much for investing time with us and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. For next episode, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and send your feedback. Until next time, have yourself a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.